Hello and welcome to another screencast from eDesign 360. This is your host, Ames Brown, and today we're going to be continuing where we left off in the previous episode, examining different approaches in Flash to providing real interactive learning processes associated with what we commonly call assessment or quiz type interactions or test type interactions. So now we want to move and look at visual feedback. And here's a typical type of item that you might think about being associated with the field of mathematics. And we're looking at the concept of the circle. Here, instead of buttons with text item choices, you're actually looking totally at visual choices. And in this case, the vector tools in Flash were used to create an outer perimeter of a circle and two different vector line segments. Now this would be the correct response, but let's suppose we clicked on this first. Right? So we're getting feedback that is still including the concept of diameter, but we're getting you, the user or learner, to think about why you made that choice right at that moment. And so learning is occurring at the same time that assessment is occurring. So if we were to click on the outer perimeter, we again get a response that is done in terms of the item of the question, right? But we are learning more and engaging that concept more right at that moment. And even if we provide the correct answer, we are also expanding on our correct response and engaging other elements of it. So that's an example, a very simple one using vector graphics right within Flash. And here we'll look at an example where we bring in bitmap images. So in this sense, we're looking at a biological subject domain. And if I were to click on this fish, well, I'm again being informed in relation to the question. This is not a catfish, but I am learning more about this decision that I made right at that moment of my cognitive processing. And in this case, I have selected a type of catfish, but it's not the Plecostomus catfish that the question is asking about. And if I were to select the correct response, I'm also learning a little bit more about that type of catfish. So this is an example using bitmap images. And we can also look at examples that use audio. So here we have an example from the biological field, subject domain again. And this time we're looking at the type of sounds that different birds make. So here, instead of clicking on visual elements that are part of the concept, we're just using a button to trigger the exploration of the actual audio. And then we can come down under here and make a choice. So if we were to choose one, well, that's not the correct answer, but we learn what bird that is that makes that particular call. And if we choose here, that's also not the correct answer, but we learn what type of bird makes that call. And if we choose here, then we are reinforced that we have the correct response, that we had identified the correct sound for a hawk. But at the same time that we had answered that, we may not be quite sure about these other sounds. So this allows us to explore and further learn right at the point that this thinking is occurring. So if we look here at the circle example, right, there are no obvious typical bubble type button responses like we have here, right? Typical approach, right? Instead, the line segments become the buttons. So we, and these by the way are vector elements that are drawn directly in Flash. So we have an outer circle, we have a vector line segment here and a vector line segment here, and these have all been converted to symbols, in particular button symbol. Right? So this is a button and this is a button. So we can apply the same principle that we used here for traditional looking buttons to these visual elements that are now buttons. So when we look at this text field here, it has the variable name Q4 underscore feedback. It's a dynamic text field, so it allows us to program feedback from each of these visual element buttons to appear in this area here. And so if I click on this element and I look at the action script, I see that it's var for variable. So I'm doing a variable definition, var Q4 underscore feedback. Remember, that's the name of the dynamic text field, equals. And here I'm assigning this text string to it, right? Starts with a quote, ends with a quote, and then finally a semicolon to conclude the statement. In this case, you also see very basic HTML markup using the I and /I for italic, and use the less than and greater than signs as brackets. This is traditional HTML coding for tagging. And you can also, so that's the I for making that word italicized, and we also have an italicized word here at the end. And the reason that that works is because this dynamic text field, the Q4 underscore feedback, had this little element checked or made active to render as HTML for this dynamic text field. So it actually processes HTML markup. And here we have the images. So here we have bitmap images that were imported into the library. And you can see right here that there was a fish Molly, fish Pictus, fish Placo that were PNGs that were brought in. And then by right-clicking or control-clicking on the Mac, those were converted to symbols, but they're already symbols now. And in particular, those were converted to button symbols. Right? So now in the modules library, we see the little button symbol associated with the same name as the original bitmap PNG. And so this is now, when we look in properties, called Q5 underscore feedback, right? So that's the variable name for this dynamic text field. And these each have their var variable definition for Q5 underscore feedback, that's the dynamic text field, and what text string is supposed to appear there when that visual element is clicked on. So in this case, we start with a quote. Here we're using the bold, so the B with the brackets, the /B to close it, because the dynamic text field is set to HTML. So we can apply some nice formatting. We end with a quote, semicolon, and everything that's there will appear in the text box area when that item is clicked on. And if we look at our last example with the audio processing, this uses the same principles as we used in a previous demonstration, and where we apply audio variables so that we can call each audio element. So if we go back to our library, we'll see that we have these three audio files here, called bird hawk, bird owl, bird parrot, all MP3 files, and they each have a linkage definition. Right? So when I click on one of those and select properties, bring that up here, you can see that this was made into a variable name. And I always recommend using the same name as a well-named file name for the audio file or bitmap file that was brought in. And just removing the dot file extension at the end, and you have a nice variable name, and it's exported for ActionScript and ready to be used. So we've done that for each of these. And now if we go to our first frame and we look at the ActionScript on that frame, we'll see that we have a 2-line variable definition for each of those sounds. When we come back to look at the audio file, we can see, we look at the ActionScript, that we have stop all sounds after on release, so that if you want to keep clicking on it to hear it again, it's going to stop what was playing and play it again for you. And then we have the variable dot start, right, with the opening, closing parentheses, semicolon. And what that does is the 0 just indicates that it's starting from the beginning of the sound, and the second 0 just indicates that it's playing once. So you do the same approach for each of the 3 variable definitions on the other 2 buttons. And then these behave in the same way on giving feedback that a regular text item option would behave in terms of sending the text to appear in this Q6 underscore feedback field. So now you have some approaches to providing interactive learner feedback right at the moment that deep thought is occurring, that maximizes not just textually based thought, but visual and audio cognitive processing as well. So think about adding these types of learner interactions to your instructional module, and join us again soon for another episode. This has been eDesign 360.